welcome. My name is Cristal Gonzalez Avila, and I will be facilitating the next 3 workshops. Shoebox altar making, or we're going to be referring to it as hashtag ETC Altar 2020. I'm so excited to be here with you all. We're going to have 3 workshops and all of them built up to our final project. So please continue to check up on the next video so we could keep building our altares together. This year we will not be celebrating Dia de los Muertos at El Teatro Campesino. However, we are hoping that these workshops happening in the month of October allow all of us to celebrate from our homes, our loved ones, be able to pass down the traditions of Dia de los Muertos. So mil gracias for joining us. We're going to get started. So the first thing I want you all to do is make sure you have the materials that you need for today. Today, let's make sure we have our box. We've selected a shoebox where we're going to be creating. Mine happens to have a nice little flap to it, but yours might look a little different, a little bigger. That's okay. Some extra material that I may or may not use to give my altar levels. So see if you could find some of those pieces. You want to have some water, some paintbrushes, a towel, and then just a scratch piece of paper, pencil. We'll get started just with this. Also, if you have a grocery bag, that would be great, or some tissue paper that we might be able to use to line our shoebox. So today's lesson, we will focus on building our altar, really giving it just the first phase. Today we'll begin our session by covering our box, our shoebox, with either a paper bag or tissue paper, or we could use paint or a combination of those. That's what we're going to start with. We'll sketch what our altar is going to look like. Now, before we get started, because I know we're all very excited to get started, we want to make sure we have a piece of paper. In my case, I'm going to be using a Sharpie just so that the image comes through nice and clean for you on the other side. But let's start with the pencil, everyone else at home. And what I want us to do is on top of this piece of paper, I want you to think of who. ¿Quién? Who are we honoring in this Dia de los Muertos? Who keeps coming to mind? Who might need a little extra prayer? Who wants to be in our altares at home? Okay, so this shoebox is going to act as an altar in itself. So this is another example that I have here for us. All right, and it could stand alone. This altar could be on its own, or it could be part of a larger altar that you might have at home. Your family might have 3 children at home, so all 3 of them could dedicate a small shoebox altar for someone else in your family that you want to celebrate, and then together you make a nice large altar. I want you to take a moment and write down who will we be celebrating, who will we be honoring in this Dia de los Muertos. I'm going to go ahead and add mine up here. I'm going to be honoring my abuelita Angela. Once we've identified the who, we want to start sketching. Now we know our shoe boxes are going to look different. So mine looks something like this. And we don't want it to be perfect, just so it gives you an idea. So as we start thinking of the who, I want you to think of things that remind you of that person. What were they like? What did they like? For my abuelita Angela, for my altar, I am going to create this large tree. Okay. So far for my altar, I've started sketching my box, and I put a tubo here. And I will be using this roll of paper next to my shoebox to create a trunk, a tree trunk. Why I'm adding that is every time I think of my abuelita Angela, I think of the big tamarindo tree she had in her Colima home. So I want to make sure I honor that in her altar, okay? I'm going to start noticing where I could add levels to my altar. So a traditional altar has 4 layers to it, 4 levels. I want to make sure I see, well, what do I have in my in my home. And again, let's use what we have at home. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples that I have. And you could tell your mom, hey, give me this. Or can we empty out some paper, a paper roll, okay? This is from the toilet paper, and this is from napkins. These little guys, these little plastic containers, I started saving them. They're like the seaweed packets. This one was like a little muffin container. And this guy had some glasses in it. It's anything that you could think that you could find at home or in your recycling bin. Start saving those on the side because they're great ways to add levels to our altares. A few more other things that are great, and I highly encourage you to use as we start building our levels, these great containers, okay? So this is an egg container. We could use it as an altar base or another level on top. I also have these corks right here that I may or may not use, but they're great to have just in case a wonderful idea comes to mind. Right now, we're only working with our box, our sketch, some tissue paper, and any possible layering that we might want to use for our shoebox. In my case, I am going to look at what I have and see how I could add levels to my altar. At my sketch, I want a box up here, and I have it, but in case I don't have it, I have to keep an eye out for it. And I'm going to want some type of space there. I might even add a mirror. And then I want another little tablita here. And I might go bananas. I might add another level at the bottom. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4 levels, okay? And then I want this big árbol to come out. So I might extend the branches outward. And I know that my branches are going to be long. So I might even think I need to pick up some branches that I might see throughout the week to make sure I could add this to my altar, okay? So I'm going to set my sketch aside for a moment, keeping it present always. Again, this is a reference to what it can look like, not limited to. Little figures made out of model clay. I added a little bit of fabric to give it some punch, but as you can see, we're trying to add as much color as we want. And this could be 10 times bigger than this, right? Depending on the size of your box, and then depending how elaborate you want to go with it, all right? So this is just one example, and together we're going to create another one, and then at home, you're going to create your very own. So let's get started with a paper bag. Now, how do we do that? For any of you that are really great gift wrappers, this is going to be nice and easy. We're going to want to open that paper bag. Cut from one corner and meet the corner at the top. Cut the top off our bag, that rectangular part at the top, we want to cut that off, going all the way around using your tijeras. Now, if you need some help with this, make sure you ask an adult. And just as if we were going to be wrapping a gift, mine again comes out, so it's going to be a little extra tricky. But for those of you that have a box that is 2 separate pieces, we're going to find that a little easier. Measure it all the way around it. Aha, this piece is going to work. Now, if my box is larger and one bag doesn't do it, you're going to want to cut 2 bags and tape them, okay? Okay, so I'm just starting to measure. Beautiful. All right, so I know that it's up to there. And I'm going to make, just with my hand, I'm going to press it down so I know what I need to cut. Okay. And then I know it's going to come down all the way up to there. I'm not going to worry about the sides. The sides don't have any printing. And I'm going to trim just a little bit outside of the edge of my box. I trim the edge of this, and I could put this on the side, okay? Because I might be able to use it for a little something else.
So I want to measure it. Okay, good. It's going to fit just fine. Again, if you need help cutting these small pieces, make sure you ask for it at home. Again, I haven't taped anything down yet. Just still trying to measure it. All right, so that's going to look good. Now, if I look to the sides, my bag isn't big enough to cover the sides. So I'm going to use the paper bag, any piece of paper that I have extra, and cover the sides first before I wrap it. All right? And I'm going to trace it. And I want to make sure two sides fit. So I'm going to use one corner and then I'll use the other. Now I know the other side is, so I'm going to go ahead and do it twice. Okay. Use a pencil to trace it. And I'm going to go ahead and cut those squares now. And these are okay if you trim them all the way down, only because you do not have to worry about the edges. We have enough to cover whatever you have left over. Don't discard it yet. So I'm just going to put all these scraps to the side.
We're in this place right here where I've measured my paper bag. It fits. It's going to look good. I've measured the sides because I need a little extra to cover the sides. It won't cover enough with just one bag. And I'm going to start gluing it or taping it down. And I'll show both.
I'm going to start with the sides. If I have tape, go ahead and use masking tape because you could paint over it and it still looks good. And then you want to do it as clean as possible by going to the edge and folding inward. Edge, inward. And let's not overdo it on the tape. Those two pieces should be enough because remember, you're still wrapping the rest of the paper bag onto it. Press down on it. And let's do each step with so much love. This is for someone that we love. All right, so that's what you would do if you're going to be using tape throughout all of it. I'm actually curious to try a little bit of glue on the rest of it, so I'm going to do that. And that way you get a nice example too of the glue, all right? This guy has a little lip here that I actually really like. So I'm going to keep that lip area and I'm going to use only up to here. And to actually get this started and have a cleaner finish at the side, let me tape this guy. So I'm going to do a combination. I'm going to use glue and tape just to make this edge nice and clean.
So far, we're looking at something like this. Okay, and I'm going to start going around it after I glue it, and then careful with these corners. You're going to want to cut on the sides. Again, it's almost like you're wrapping a gift.
I'm going to be generous with my glue. Mine happens to have a nice little spout. But if you have one of those glue sticks, that might be a little bit more work on your end. And I want to press down. Make sure you mend the paper with the box. And then start finding those corners and press on them. So you want to press on those corners using your nail to kind of give it a nice little line there all the way around. And this is going to take us a bit, but it's going to be worth the while. Okay. I'm going to continue adding glue here to press down on it. And I know it's coming up all the way up to there. So I'm actually going to trim a little bit more. One more right here. glue this down. And press it down. And again, start thinking of the layers you're gonna wanna add, because if your adding also has some writing, you might also need to add paper to it. To the side here, you might have to trim a little here and there. And to just give it a nice finish, to this side, again, I'm gonna paint it eventually. And if you're not gonna paint it, that's okay too, then just be mindful of how much tape, but I'm going to give it some color, so I'm not worried about the tape. With the glue, you definitely want to be generous. With the tape, we could be a little bit more discreet, considering we want to make sure we're actually going to be able to cover it with the paint. But again, let's use what we have at home. Again, make that nice, beautiful edge. This bit of the process takes a little longer because we're making sure our box is covered. So my box is looking like this. This is going to be the top of my altar, and the end, I'm going to finish it with some glue. Again, being generous with the glue. Fold it inward. Use your finger to remove it. Get that napkin ready. Have that napkin ready in case you have a little extra glue. Like the shoe, the wing elements that it had, so I'm actually going to bring that little corner inward so it maintains that little flap. Or I could do it now. Just make sure you bend them down so it knows that it's staying downward. All right, let's take a look here. We covered all of it, as you could see. Again, I used a combination of tape and glue to just show both options, but you could either just go all tape or all glue. And I really like the flaps on my box, so I trimmed, folded it as if it was a gift, okay? It's all ready. It should have a neutral color. If you wanted the paper bag, you could also do it just with tissue. Just know that the tissue is sometimes a little light. So if we only cover it with one sheet, you might be able to still see writing. So you might want to double. And look at my sketch. What do I imagine doing it? For who I imagine it doing it? For who's my altar for? And then what other elements do I want to use? So where are my levels at? And start trying to see where you would put those levels. So I want a tree on my altar. So I'm going to add that tree right there. Not going to add it yet, but just see the placement of it. I do want to add another layer at top, one at the bottom here, and that's what I wanted to look at the end. Now, the only thing that really right now I should add, because it's part of my base and I'm going to color it, is going to be the tree, el árbol, okay? And it's just a roll of paper now, but I want to make sure I include it when I give my shoebox the first coat of paint. So I'm going to attach the roll of paper to, going to be using tape for this, and I want to make sure it doesn't go past the shoebox. It'd be difficult to keep it in place. Again, only if you're adding a level that's maybe paper made, this is where you would add it. I'm gonna add another piece of tape going the opposite direction for support. You might not have a tree. You might think of a big floor, a big flower, or it might be staircases that you're building. Awesome. So this is where we're at. I've added an extension. This might be a second. You might think of adding the roll y otro pedacito acá arriba para hacer otro nivel. That works just fine. In my case, this is the only paper layer that I'm using. So if I was to be using a milk, might be a little heavy, or I would place it up here to give it another level, or to give it some height, then I would want to also cover this in paper, or not paper bag, and place it now, so that when I tape it down, this is part of the first coat that I give paint to, okay? Anything that you're going to add that is plastic made,
let's hold off on those. Just this is it. Now I want you to take a look at it, look at your sketch again, and imagine what colors are we going to add to our phase one. I'm going to put this aside for a second, get my water ready. We will work with what we have, and then think of what's the base color I'm going to give my altar. Now, my grandma was very vibrant, so I'm going to be thinking of her as I'm adding color to my altar. And I am going to choose not only one, but actually two colors. I'm going to be using those colores. I'm using acrylic paint, but you don't have to use acrylic paint. And I'm going to use a blue and a yellow. Reminder, if you're going dark, if you're thinking your box is black, that is okay. Just remember, it's harder to go light once you've gone a little darker. So start with lighter colors, and if you want to add hints of dark colors, you could do that. You also want to think of complementary colors. What colors look good together, and you could refer to the color wheel. I'm going to begin painting my altar. So you want your palette out, your paint. Oh, that's a nice bright blue there. And decide what is going to be painted what. I'm going to focus on coloring this yellow. So go ahead and begin. We celebrate Dia de los Muertos. We celebrate with alegría. And try to use vibrant colors. Colores vibrantes. Colores que llaman la atención. Colors that make us happy. Colors that call our ancestors. The favorite colors of the person you're dedicating this altar to. Okay? So this is just the top right here. I am not going to do the bottom. Okay? Have a big old mess in your workspace. So I'm going to do the top, amarillo, all of it, and my sides are going to be blue. So we want to treat our brushes, our tools con amor, with love and care. This is not a race. Work at your own tempo, what feels right. And as you could see, the tape that I used on the sides is already being covered. Because I am leaving my tree trunk, or I'm thinking this is going to be an árbol, a tree, I'm going to work around it, okay? So I will not be painting my árbol just yet. The tape, if you had tape on the side, or if you added another paper item to add level, make sure you separate it if you don't want it the same color. Okay, so I know this is going to be a tree branch. I am not going, a tronco, un árbol, el tronco del árbol. I am not going to not to. Okay. That tape, if it's starting to lift, paint it downward. The paint will also help it keep it in place. Y otra vez con mucho amor para nuestros seres queridos. The back part right here, this you could paint. We're going to avoid painting the bottom too a little later, but right now we want to focus on the main part, which is the sides. Why we want to get most of this paint done is we want to make sure it has enough time to dry before we continue adding.
So sigan pintando sus cajitas. My base is done. The outside of my altar is looking good, okay? I want to add color to it in here. I'm actually going to give this a few minutes to set before I tilt it and start painting inside. All right. Meantime, wash my paintbrush and have it ready when I start going in with the blue.
So we're gonna let our box, our altar sit on the side for a quick minute, maybe 5 minutes, just to give the paint around it a nice little opportunity to settle the paint in. And we're gonna move on. I want you to see, today, I wanna show you a few items we could create with tissue paper. And I've pre-cut mine, so no one gave them to me like this. I pre-cut them, but I will go over the sizes with you in a moment. So if you want to take a second and identify where's your tissue paper and what colors do you have. I'm going to be using orange for the traditional flor de muerto, the marigolds, the cempasúchil, okay? Second, to identify that, you're going to need your scissors again, nuestras tijeras.
Now, the size that we're going to need to cut, the orange paper, or in this case, the large flower paper for my cempasúchil, I'm choosing for them to be orange. They come in orange and yellow tradicionalmente, vienen en amarillo y anaranjado. However, you could also make it any color you have, so don't let that stop you. And we're gonna do 6.5 inches by 6.5 inches. And that gives you about this size of a flor. So you'll get about a flower about this size, okay? And we could add to it, to our altar, or we could put it on the side of our altar. The other size that I would highly encourage you to cut a few pieces of is the small flor, and that's 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. I have green. Again, you could use whatever color, but this is for a leaf that I want to create. And let's also keep it 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. I use my ruler for those measurements. However, I've also realized that it comes already in a similar size, okay? So your tissue paper usually comes like in 4s. That's perfect. That's actually what we need. So you're gonna fold it in half. And I like really pressing it down so I have that nice edge when I'm cutting it and it's not a surprise, okay? You could double check once you, before you start cutting. And you're gonna be folding it 4 times. Again, it's typically how it comes, folded, but just in case it doesn't, or you have it in a way that it's not folded that way, just check the sizes. Move a few of these to the side. And again, we're doing this as we're waiting or giving our box some time to dry. So once I have that paper in half, let's cut it right at the half. And then I'm going to cut on each line. Bringing all those together, now I'm gonna wanna fold it again. And that should give you the 4.5 by 4.5 squares that we need, okay? I'm doing 2 pieces at a time, so I got 2 of those larger pieces and folded in half. And I start creating my little stack there. Again, 2 sheets folded in half. It helps the process go a little faster. As you could see, todas están saliendo del mismo tamaño. They're all coming about the same size. Beautiful work. All right, nice. So you should have a nice little stack of papers. And again, we're only going to be using 3 of these to create a flor. And if you have it, these are little ties that you find at the grocery store. Don't have one, yarn will do it just the same. Okay. And what you want to do is accordion style. Okay. And it's about the size of your thumb. Back and forth. Estilo accordion. And you're going to want to wrap. See the majority of them flap this way? That's where you're going to want to close it. Think of the middle, so fold it in half. Well, that's about right. And I want to put this, I want to wrap it enough so that it keeps the flower in place, but that it has some space so when I open the flower up, it doesn't break. The end, you have the choice of going pointy or round. I really like the flowers that are round. They come out a lot cleaner. You open it up like an abanico, like a fan, and 1 sheet at a time, you pull towards you. 1 sheet at a time. Okay, you see that? And then the second layer. If you do all 3 layers at the same time, doesn't give you the same result, okay? And even the last layer, make sure you pull it up towards you. Ah, una flor, a flower. Now, how do I add that leaf to it? With your 4.5 by 4.5, whatever color you want your leaf. I like folding it in half. Even if it doesn't have a clean finish, if you fold that other edge across from it and you place the flower right above it, it gives you the impression of a leaf. And now you're gonna work it around. So you're gonna bring the remaining around, and it gives you a leaf at the end. Okay, so those are your flores. If you do the larger one, again, it's 4 sheets for the larger ones and 3 sheets for the smaller ones. They're gonna need either yarn or a little twisty like this. But let's go back to our altar.
Okay, now we're gonna go back to, and if you could remember, we're still letting it dry, but start imagining, well, would I add flores to my altar right here? What do the flores represent? What do the flowers represent? Our cempasúchiles, and why they are is because of the smell. They have a really strong scent, and it is known to be one of the many elements that brings and guides for Dia de los Muertos. So the scent of the cempasúchil along with the scent of the copal, the spirit to guide, we guide our spirits, our antepasado a little later on. Adding to our altar, I am going to add the coat of paint for the inside of the house. I'm gonna go with azul. I really like this blue. And I'm gonna add the blue to the back part of my altar. All right, so let's get started with that.
Doing the sides where it meets the other color, if you have a different color on the side. If you decided to go the same color inside and outside, that's perfectly fine. Right here,
I painted the inside of my altar a nice, beautiful blue, and I made the rest of my box yellow, amarillo. I still haven't painted this, and that's okay. I'm gonna paint it brown. I wanna make it a tree, so I wanna start imagining what else do I need to make that tree. So at home, if you've added a layer or if you're thinking of adding something additional to your box, think of what else do I need? What other materials, okay? So we should be here for the first phase of our altar. We're gonna set it aside and make sure it dries completely. We'll keep adding to it. And we're gonna do one more paper activity together. So la flor les enseñé. I showed you the flower, the cempasúchil. Now what we want to do is we want to do a little bit of papel picado, all right? And papel picado is going to be a different size cut. So if you have additional tissue paper, let's find it. I want to go over the papel picado, and it could be whatever color you want.
For the papel picado, we're going to be using this size, a little smaller than the flor and the leaf. The papel picado is actually 5 inches by 2.5. And you're gonna cut as much as you think you might need. So you only need 1 sheet por tirita per papel picado, okay? So once you get your tissue paper folded in half, so once you get your papel, let's fold it again in half, and let's do it. Once you get your piece of tissue paper folded in half, press that side, and then let's do 5 inches. So that's about 5 inches right there. With my tijeras, with my scissors, I'm gonna snip it there. So I know that's 5 inches. I'm gonna fold right there. Now I know that's 5, so I could do accordion style and fold. That's 5 more. And 5 more. We'll trim it and place it to the side in case something else comes up. So we know it's 5 width and 2.5 inches. That's 2.5 right there. You could use your pencil. You could start snipping if you feel prepared to do that. 2.5. And a half. Again, you're going to have a little bit at the end. Nice. Cut the bottom. Set that aside. And let's do accordion style. Using that little point of reference that we did for ourselves, that little snip. Fold there. And then fold one more time. So all of them are the same size. And we're going to cut. Once we cut like this, you'll see it's a big, nice rollito, okay? Don't undo it all because it still has markings, so let's cut a few at a time. So for every little strip that we did, you should get 6. And set that aside. And we would do the same for the rest of them.
So we just finished doing a couple examples of our papel picado, and as you can see, all of them have different yet similar cuttings, a nice beautiful finish on the sides. That's optional if you want to, and you could do as many or as few as you together. So juntos vamos a estar compartiendo un poquito de nosotros al hacer nuestro altar para nuestro ser querido que ya no está con nosotros. So right now we have a base color or 2 base colors, any possible paper additions that we're going to add to our altar, all right? Papel picado, and I want you to explore even more at home with this. And florecitas, try to do a large one and a small one. As you can see, the flor already pops your altar. All right, that's our lesson for today. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Continue to make flowers. We only did together 2, but let's do 5, 6, so we have plenty to choose from when we start decorating our box. If you have any additional ideas or materials that you might need or that you see in your house, start bringing them into your creative little area so we could keep playing with them. I'll give you more ideas in our next lesson where we are going to be creating a few little characters like this little perrito here, or people that we could mold from either clay or model magic, if you have it. If no, de papel lo podemos hacer. So keep looking around your house. What do I have and how can I add it to my altar? And of course, keep in mind, who am I doing this for? ¿Para quién? Yes, it's for us, so we have a visual representation of our loved one, but it's also an ofrenda. It's an offering to our loved one to invite them to join us back for Dia de los Muertos. So it's a beautiful process that we're doing together, and together, even in this way, we are connecting. So muchísimas gracias for joining me in this first lesson, and I will see you for lesson number 2. Adios.